Well, hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athletic UK HQ here in London. And we are reacting to the World Cup draw, which has finally just finished. And it has served up a fantastic draw with so much interest for the likes of England, the USA, for Canada, for all of the teams in the draw, of course. But we are focusing here on the Athletic, on the likes of England and the USA, and it just so happens that they are in the same group, Group B. And as you can see, joining me live is Paul Tenorio from the Athletic, our US correspondent, currently in Costa Rica. We'll explain about that in a moment's time. And also Jack Pitt-Brooke, who watches England for the Athletic as well. Gents, it's great to have you on board. And first, I'll come to you, Jack, if I may. Just in general terms, reaction to the draw for England. If you're just catching up online at the moment, it's England, Iran, USA, and it will be Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine in that final spot in Group B. Jack, your reaction first of all.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that this is a good draw for England. This is not as difficult, I think, as some of the draws they might have got. I think the most important thing they had to do was to avoid one of the very good teams like Germany and the Netherlands from the second pot. They successfully did that. I certainly think it's an eye-catching draw. You know, England-USA is always an eye-catching game. I think that the USA will probably be a better team than the team that England drew 1-1 with in the 2010 World Cup. They've got a new generation of young players, many of whom play in Europe, who we're all excited to see. So I think that won't be easy, but I think it will be possibly easier than Germany or Holland. Iran, a bit of an unknown quantity for England in the sense that England haven't played them recently, or I think even at all. And then the final team to qualify via the UEFA playoffs, you know, will be very eye-catching, whoever it is. I think, you know, England obviously played Wales at Euro 2016, and they have some very good players as well. Equally, Scotland and Ukraine will be difficult sides. But overall, Adam, I think this is not as hard a group as England might have got.
Well, let's throw that straight to Paul. From the US side of things, how do you view the prospect of England, Iran, and obviously we have that unknown in that final spot in Group B. But first and foremost, coming up against England, memories of 2010, maybe even memories way back of 1950 as well. Who knows?
Well, yeah, certainly I would agree with what Jack said as far as England's perspective. I mean, the U.S. is a growing team. They are the youngest team by average age to have qualified for this World Cup by 2 years. And so while they have plenty of talent, much of it is still unproven, certainly on a stage this big. There will be very few players on this roster who have played in a World Cup tournament. Even Christian Pulisic, because the U.S. missed out on the World Cup 4 years ago, this will be his first chance on such a grand stage. So I agree that it's a good draw when I look at the rest of the group. And I think of the pot one teams, you know, England and the U.S. familiarity with those players, you know, probably they feel better about that than facing France or Brazil. But, you know, it's a draw with a lot of political connotations as well for the U.S. And sorry if my Wi-Fi is shaky. As you mentioned earlier, I am in Costa Rica doing my best here from Central America.
No, absolutely. No, it is spot on at the moment. I wanted to ask you another question on that. I mean, in terms of the memories of 2010, obviously it was interesting watching on social media that Rob Green, when USA and England were pitted up against each other, I think he just posted a set of eyes going, he remembers that well. I mean, how fond are the memories of that game? And it was Clint Dempsey who equalised, wasn't it, after Steven Gerrard had put England ahead?
I have a feeling, first of all, that Rob Green's agent's going to be busy in the next few months, fielding calls from the likes of us, by the way. Yeah. But no, I think the U.S. relish the chance to play against England. They enjoy it. You know, there is a little bit of especially when we're talking about football, a big brother, little brother effect here, where, you know, England says, listen, you were our colony and we are a better footballing nation than you are. And I think because so many people in this country grow up watching the Premier League, there is going to be a huge amount of information that the fans already know about the England team. And so it's not just the memories of 2010. It's that for many American fans, these are the players that they're most familiar with on the English national team. And so there are going to be not split loyalties at all, but certainly there's going to be more familiarity, I think, than there would be with some of the other teams. And I think also because of that familiarity, both the good and the bad, more of a belief that, hey, we could beat this team. This player's not so good that we can't, overcome them. And because of the familiarity within the U.S. side, I mean, a player like Christian Pulisic at Chelsea, or even Anthony Robinson at Fulham, Yunus Musa, who grew up playing in Arsenal, they're not going to be afraid of some of the kids that they grew up playing with at the youth level for England. And I think that helps for a younger team. There's a perspective that young teams do better in these tournaments, partly because they don't know what to be afraid of. They don't know to feel nervous. And I think drawing England and having those connections within the fan base, having those connections within the actual teams adds a little bit to that advantage, and that it kind of decreases that fear factor. Whereas, for me going into this draw, I thought the U.S. would have been really in trouble if they had drawn Brazil or France out of pot one, that I think would have been teams that could absolutely overwhelm them on every level. I think there may be at least an early mental victory for some of the players in the U.S. And even because of the result that happened in 2010, that you can look back and say, yes, the U.S. can get a result against England at the World Cup.
Absolutely. Stay there, Paul, because I do want to ask you about Costa Rica and just a little bit of background on that, because obviously we want to tick a lot of the different boxes in all the groups from A to H on this reaction show. Jack, from your point of view, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. England always do, so let's do it.
Yeah.
But have you been plotting the route to the final already? Have you been seeing what's what?
Honestly, Adam, I have been taking a look.
Okay.
So the good news is that if England win Group B, they would face the runners-up from Group A. Group A is the group in which Qatar are the seeds, so it's not an especially strong group.
So we're looking Netherlands or Senegal, yeah.
The Netherlands are clearly the strongest team in that group. I think Senegal also a fantastic team, brilliant players, won the African Nations Cup, beat Egypt on penalties on Tuesday night to qualify for this World Cup. So, let's say hypothetically Holland win that group, Senegal a second. England, I think, would have a difficult game against Senegal, but not an impossible game in that last 16 tie. The other teams in that group, of course, being Qatar and Ecuador. Where it gets tough is that England in the quarterfinals, I think, would be, assuming that France win Group D, would play France. Obviously, the reigning World Cup holders, they slightly underperformed, I think, a little bit in the Euros, given the players that they had. But that would be a really tough game. England have got a bit better in the last few years in big games against big teams. They've beaten Spain a few times. They obviously beat Germany in the Euros at Wembley last summer. But playing France in a World Cup quarterfinal in Qatar, I think that would be if it happened, that would be the hardest game of Gareth Southgate's tenure if England were to get there. And then beyond that, Adam, well, they're in the same half as Belgium and Portugal, assuming that is that Belgium and Portugal win their groups. Honestly, I think France are a better team than Belgium or Portugal. I think both Belgium and Portugal are slightly past their peak as teams. I think they're slightly old now. So I would actually, with my England hat on, I would worry less about that game than I would about the quarterfinal with France.
Okay. We have gone really quite far ahead of ourselves, but I do like the positivity.
We always do, Adam.
Like. We
That's
always
what it's
do.
all about.
Of course we do. Of course we do. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I just wanted to speak to you, Paul, about Costa Rica, because obviously their place is not guaranteed at this World Cup. In terms of the reaction to the draw, where you are and the potentials, just sort of give us the temperature of what it's like there right now.
Well, there was a moment of pause, I think, as the group started to shake out and they were looking around and saying, oh, I think we're going to end up with Spain and Germany.
Yeah.
And you could sense the attitude that start to change. Now, this is a Costa Rican team right now in this country, very positive around this team. They took 19 of their final 21 points in CONCACAF qualifying to move into that fourth position. They did so by essentially leaning heavily on their domestic league and bringing some young 18, 19, 20-year-olds into the squad finally and integrating new faces. And so there's a lot of positive energy around this team. there was a transition moment too, recognizing that they were up against Spain and Germany, to remember what the group looked like in 2014 in Brazil when they made their run. That was also the group of death for Costa Rica, and yet they emerged from the group and made their run. So there was almost like a change of mentality. Of course, here in Costa Rica, where my father's from, the Ticos are known for the saying "Pura vida," very positive country, very optimistic country. So very quickly they transitioned to the optimism of, we got out of a group of death once before and advanced all the way to the quarterfinals. Why not again? This time vanquishing bigger countries like Germany and Spain, but certainly not the ideal draw for the Costa Ricans.
Absolutely. Paul, look, we really appreciate your time. Enjoy your time in Costa Rica, and we will see you in Qatar in Group B for England against USA. I'm very much looking forward to it. Jack, you stay where you are. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much.
Just to quickly run you through, obviously you've got the groups at the bottom of your screen there. And as we were mentioning there in Group E, as you can see, Spain, it will be Costa Rica or New Zealand, with Germany and Japan in Group F, Belgium, Canada, Morocco and Croatia, Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland and Cameroon in Group G. In Group H, as you can see there, Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay and South Korea. Now, look, I wanted to get a little bit of reaction from a South American perspective. And we can welcome onto the call Felipe Cardenas, who is from The Athletic. Of course, a lot of you will be familiar with him. Just tell us where you are right now at the moment, Felipe.
I'm in Atlanta, based in Atlanta. Watched the draw from here, from the southern state of Georgia, but happy to be with you all.
Yeah, no, well, it's great to have you on the call. Just give us your reaction first of all. Obviously, you're in the States, a different perspective on the USA's draw, and then we'll come on to some of the South American propositions that have really stood out for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, like, disclaimer, I'm Colombian born, so I struggled this past week when Colombia was eliminated, and I came into this draw thinking like, oh, it's one of those draws where you can't really be that excited because your home nation's not in it. But I had a lot of fun, like, watching the draw, like, especially the U.S. group, I think is fabulous. Another matchup with England. I think politically that matchup against Iran is just going to be a global event. And then, they could have I think it turned out to be a favorable draw for them. If they get Wales, Scotland, or the Ukraine, I think the U.S. will feel pretty good about how they stand and how they face against those rivals. I cover Mexico, so I think from another North American perspective, Mexico, I think it has a sensational group for, especially the casual observer. Obviously, they face Argentina. We know that Tata Martino, Mexico's coach, is an Argentine national. He coached Argentina to 2 consecutive Copa America final losses in 2015 and 2016. He knows Lionel Messi very well. So I think that Group C, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland, again, I think there are going to be some great matches. Mexico thinking that they have to prepare for both Argentina, Messi, and Robert Lewandowski is just going to be fun leading up to the World Cup.
Absolutely. Now, you will have seen on the call that we have Matt Slater, who is in the convention center out in Qatar at the moment. I thought you had a cigarette for after the draw had finished behind your ear, but it was a pen. Yeah, close but no cigar.
I promise.
Matt, it's great to have you on. Felipe, I'll come back to you in a moment. Matt, just tell us, just give us a sort of a taste of what it was like being there and enjoying the the show, yeah. I suppose, the big show.
Hiya. Yeah. Did you not enjoy the song?
It was it was interesting, wasn't it? Carry on.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's still going on. I can show you. Let me just try something, right?
Yeah.
Can you see up there? Those are the managers. Those are the managers up there having a photo. It's been going on for quite a while, which has been the theme of these draws. I think it took 47 minutes before we had our first ball drawn from a pot, and it was the one we all knew, Qatar. So England was the first ball properly drawn out. That was quite exciting. We had a song, we had a cartoon, we had an Egyptian actress that I'm sure is very famous. I didn't really understand what she was doing. We had some speeches. Yeah, packed, absolutely packed here. I thought the draw was actually quite slick once they actually got to it, and there were no fumbles, and it all made sense. And I mean that bit was great. Obviously, we overran, and what more can I tell you? I thought it was quite good, better than the Congress.
Yeah, a different sort of, probably less angst involved in the draw than there was in the Congress. Quite rightly so. And we are sort of suspending all discussions within this live reaction show of all the serious issues related to the Qatar World Cup, which you can read about, of course, on The Athletic. But we are just concentrating on the draw. And Matt, from your point of view, was there sort of audible reactions when teams came out, and were there gasps? Were there a round of applause? Could you read anything from the people who were in the room that they were disappointed, or was it all very much poker face?
Well, was it poker face? First of all, they're all facing that way, so I couldn't see their faces. I would say they were like, no one did that famous. Oh God, we're out. I actually wasn't that far away from the English delegation, and they seemed all right. I would say they were polite. There were like rounds of applause from sort of parts of the room where their team got called out. There were no gasps. No, there was no. Because is there a group of death? There isn't a group of death. And it seems a pretty, I wouldn't say run of the mill, but it seems a pretty fair enough kind of draw. No gasps, no hoops or hollering. Yeah, just what you'd expect, clapping and hey, we've been called out. There's our name.
Just give us a sort of a feel for what the actual atmosphere has been like in general terms, because obviously there has been a huge amount of opposition for so many years to this World Cup taking place in Qatar, having to move the whole footballing calendar and all that. How have the organisers managed to negotiate their way through this isn't an open goal sort of World Cup, similar to Russia as well in 2018. How have you sort of sensed the politics developing?
Well, look, today is kind of a politics-free zone. I mean, this feels like Planet FIFA. This is 5 billion people watching. Brand new football, the fastest ever football. Louis Vuitton case for the this is just FIFA delivering its commercial messages and bigging up the tournament and getting us all going for the tournament. And no, there's no opposition here. The fact it's in the winter has been completely forgotten. That appears to have just sailed by. People are more upset about 5 substitutes, aren't they, in the Premier League? I mean, look, the other stuff comes back tomorrow. Today is very much World Cup business as normal. And the Emir of Qatar was here. He actually gave quite a nice little speech. He made a nice self-deprecating joke to start off with. No one wants to hear me speak. And it's gone. Today's gone about as well as it can go at FIFA events, and I think the hosts will be delighted with this. Okay, Matt, we will let you go because I'm sure you have some ratting around to do, some stories to find, and some reaction to get as well. So, Matt, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy your final hours out in Qatar, and obviously you'll be able to read the reaction to the draw from Qatar from Matt Slater on The Athletic. So Matt is going to head off. Felipe, if I may come back to you, because we were sort of having a look at the South American teams in there. We discussed Argentina. You'd obviously mentioned Mexico as well, which you've been covering closely. Brazil, in terms of the number one team in the world, and 5 World Cup victories. Do you think they will be happy with their lot in Group G with Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon?
That's an excellent question, because I think if you go back to 2018, they also faced Switzerland and Serbia at the World Cup. If Costa Rica ends up in that group, I don't think they can. Let me make sure. But if Costa Rica, okay, so no, they ended up with Cameroon. So I think that's a tough group for Brazil. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really tough group. I mean, Brazil is a machine right now. They are unstoppable, incomable, undefeated in World Cup qualifying in South America. Their head coach Tiche is one of the top tacticians in the region, highly respected in South America and his home country. And I think they have a lot to prove. I mean, this is Neymar's last chance to truly become a legend in his country. He was not present. He was injured when they won the Copa America in 2019. So he hasn't won a major tournament with his country. He won a gold medal at the Olympics, but he sort of he owes something to that country. I look at that group. I think it's tough. You know, they struggled a bit in 2018. They needed a stressful last match against Serbia to get through to the second round. They win the group though in the end, but it was a tough sled for them facing, you know, Serbia and Switzerland, who I think can really trouble this side if they're structurally disciplined and they force Brazil to really break them down. But Brazil has so much individual talent. I think they're stronger this World Cup than they were in 2018. So I like them advancing. They are certainly a favorite to win the tournament, no doubt.
In terms of, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of the phrase "a group of death," but I think, you know, it is a well-trodden path in footballing parlance, especially when it comes to a World Cup to associate it with that sort of title. Jack, I'm going to ask you in a moment which one you think is the toughest group and the one that might sort of just add a little bit of unexpectedness to the draw. And the teams in it will be fearing being in it. But Felipe, from your point of view, what's your overriding feeling looking at this draw? Obviously, yes, your Colombian loyalties make it difficult, but do you feel excited by it? Do you see some sort of stories developing already within it?
Absolutely. I think it's an awesome draw. Like I said before, if you just start with Group C, you've got Tata Martino, the Argentine, facing Lionel Messi and Argentina, his home country, team that he knows very well. I think that what's interesting is that they're set to play a friendly, Mexico and Argentina, in September in Los Angeles. So they're going to get to know each other pretty well. So I think that lends itself to some nice storylines. I look at Group H, which in my opinion is, to me, the group of death. I mean, you had Portugal, Uruguay and Ghana and South Korea. Again, South Korea could be the battering ram there, but they're a team that eliminated the Germans basically in 2018. So you can never count them out. They're very experienced at the World Cup level. And I think what's awesome about Group H is you have Luis Suarez facing Ghana again. Who can forget 2010 when he was red carded in that after, you know, using his hand in a very obvious way. And then celebrating when the Ghanaian, you know, missed the penalty kick. So I think there's storylines throughout. I think from a South American perspective, you know, I think a team like Uruguay is really interesting to me. New coach Diego Alonso, for those that are listening and not familiar with him or watching, he was fired from an MLS job recently. He was the Inter Miami coach. You know, David Beckham's Inter Miami. He was the club's first coach. The pandemic just derailed everything there. He gets fired, and now he's taking his home country to the World Cup. And he's replaced a legend in Oscar Tavares, who was the Uruguayan coach for over 15 years. And I've spoken to a player, Facundo Torres, who plays for Orlando City here in MLS. He's on the Uruguayan roster. He's a young player. And the way he talks about Alonso and the fact that the energy he brings into the locker room, the dressing room. I'm sorry for our England listeners, but the fact that they want to press high at all times, be very intense. He is a very, very energetic coach, Diego Alonso. He will sweat throughout the match. He will yell, scream, push that team forward. I like them. They have an entire country behind them. They were in their deathbed a couple rounds ago in CONMEBOL, and they came back and they qualified really well. So I like Uruguay. I think that's an interesting group for them. We talked about Brazil, another South American nation that I think is going to fly under the radar. If they do well, they could be the story of the World Cup, in my opinion, is Ecuador. I think they match up well physically with any team in the world. That they have really come through and developed some really interesting young talents in that country. They are a very, very tough team to break down. If they want to sit back and counter, they can do that. They can get forward. And, I think in Group A, Qatar, Ecuador, the Netherlands and Senegal, that is a tough group for me. It's not, perhaps it's not the sexy group of death, but that's a pretty tough group. I think you can fancy the Dutch, but Ecuador to me is a team that could surprise in that group. And if they advance, they're going to be a tough out for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You almost forget about the sides that are in pot 4 at your peril, ranked 46 in the world, and yeah, they are in Ecuador in that first group with Qatar, Senegal, and the Netherlands. It will be very interesting indeed. One other team that we haven't discussed, and we are hoping to be joined by Joshua Cloak, who covers Canadian football for The Athletic, and is a very excited man at the moment because Canada are back at World Cup. We're hoping that he is going to come on. Canada in that pot 4, they are going to be in Group F with Belgium, Morocco, and Croatia. Almost as if, no, fire away. Go on, Felipe, because I was going to say, you're the closest to it.
Yeah, I wanted to say two things. First of all, when Cloak comes on, please ask him how he has felt about Canada. Even when Canada was running away with the qualifying in CONCACAF, he was worried they weren't going to qualify. And we were telling him, Canada is good. They look good. They're going to do well. Like I think they could be a surprise team at the World Cup. They are a team full of confidence. They have talent all over the field. Alphonso Davies, Tajon Buchanan, that left side for Canada is going to be really dangerous. Tajon Buchanan is a left-footed winger. He tends to play as an inverted winger, so he might be on the right side, but they just believe. They're just a team that believes that they can do well. The other thing I wanted to say, Adam, we didn't really talk about Argentina this prominently, but I think it's worth mentioning. Argentina, to me, they're a favorite. And yes, you could argue that they always are, but they haven't had great tournaments every time they're at the World Cup. They've disappointed before. 2018, a big disappointment for them. They were pretty awful in the group stage. And then they had that thriller against France in the round of 16 that ended 4-3, and they're eliminated. Since then, I think there's just a magical story around this team right now. They have captivated their country, and the love-hate relationship that Lionel Messi tends to have with Argentinians has dissipated since he lifted the Copa America trophy last summer. The relationship between the fans and the national team has always been pretty toxic, to be honest with you. And right now, they are all in on this national team. This is a team that, again, like Brazil, undefeated in World Cup qualifying. Lionel Scaloni, a 44-year-old manager, young guy. No one knew about him. He was coaching the U20s. He was the caretaker for the national team after they fired their last manager. And he has just managed to find the right recipe to get Lionel Messi to play well, to be happy, to find the right players around him. Rodrigo Paul, a fabulous, fantastic midfielder who has been essentially the main man alongside Messi during this World Cup qualifying. So Argentina has a story behind them that I don't think they've had that since '86, where the entire country is truly believing that this could be their year. Remember, they haven't won it since '86. The Copa America last summer was their first international trophy since '93. So watch out for Argentina. I mean, there's so much riding on them. Of course, Messi's last opportunity to win a trophy, to win a World Cup, actually. And like I said, the way that the relationship with that national team has just flipped over the way it was before. Remember, there's a statue of Messi in Buenos Aires that was vandalized a few years ago because they didn't think he was Argentinian enough. He's not Argentine enough. He's basically Catalan. It was always the argument while he was at Barcelona. And so that has changed. He's happy again. They sent them off last week after a win, and it looked like a party atmosphere at La Bombonera in Buenos Aires. So just a fabulous story, and one to keep your eye on if you're interested in how Argentina is going to approach this World Cup.
Absolutely. Felipe, we will follow that very, very closely, and we'll follow your writing on The Athletic. As always, you've written about some difficult subjects of late, especially concerning Mexico. I suggest everyone does go and read all about that. But you will also obviously be tracking progress of various teams heading to the World Cup and during the World Cup as well later on this year. Really appreciate you coming on, Felipe. Thank you very much indeed. We will bid you farewell. Thank you very much. Take care to you. Jack, I've given you plenty of time to process the groups. And I know how much of a sort of aficionado you are on World Cups and things like that. And you want to dig into the detail of it all. I asked you the question, I'm going to use the phrase, which is the most perilous group for the teams in it? Which group have you selected? A through to H. Which one have you gone for?
Well, Adam, I'm going to fail to answer the question for a few reasons. One is it depends how you define it. Do you mean the group in which there's 3 really good teams, so it's harder to get through? Or do you mean a group where there's the smallest gap between the teams, so everyone can take points from everyone else? Because if you mean the first category, as in the one that I think will be hardest to get out of, I really don't like the look of Group C when you've got Argentina, Mexico, and Poland, and then Saudi Arabia, who I think are less competitive. Obviously, as Felipe was saying, Argentina come in with, they've just won the Copa America. They've got Messi. They've got a new generation of players who look like they maybe gel better with Messi than perhaps in previous generations. Poland, a really difficult team to play against. England found that recently. I was at the qualifier that England drew 1-1 in Warsaw back in the autumn, and of course they've got Robert Lewandowski, who's one of the the greatest European strikers of his generation. And then Mexico, an amazing football nation. Huge passion, lots of quality, slightly underperformed in World Cups. I think they've got to 2 quarterfinals ever, and those were in 1970, 1986 when they were hosting it. So they've never punched their weight outside of Mexico. But Qatar's going to be a new experience for everyone there, so there's no reason that this shouldn't be the time that they do that. And if Mexico can perform, then all of a sudden that will be a really tough group to get out of. In terms of a group that I think everyone can beat everyone and it's going to be even and difficult, I've just got a weird feeling, Adam, about Group F, where you've got 2 big experienced European countries in Belgium and Croatia. Obviously, Croatia lost the final in 2018 to France in Moscow. Belgium, I think, blew it a bit when they were knocked out by France in the semi-finals and in St. Petersburg. Belgium definitely had the players to win that game, but they just didn't really perform. Given what happened to them in 2016, when of course they got knocked out by Wales in the Euros, I think that was another big underperformance by Belgium. Obviously they've got good players, but you wouldn't necessarily say that they are a team to watch. But then I just kind of think Canada and Morocco, that's not a great combination to have in your group. Canada, not a lot of World Cup pedigree, but they do have a lot of talent. Whether you're looking at very young, exciting players like Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David doing fantastically well at Lille, all the way up to the veteran Atiba Hutchinson, who, of course, has been a legend for Besiktas in Turkey over the last 10 years. I think teams won't want to play Canada because they are a bit of an unknown quantity. And then, of course, you've got Morocco, who qualified by the playoffs the other day. Huge amounts of talent in that group. There's players there who, if they can get them back into the team, maybe they haven't been playing so much recently, but they've got incredible amounts of talent to call upon Morocco. Adel Taarabt's been in and out of the team. He would have been part of this group, but picked up an injury playing for Benfica recently. He's playing really well over the last few years. I think you can get him into the World Cup. He's a dangerous player. Hakim Ziyech had a falling out with the coach recently of the Morocco national team. I really hope, for the sake of the World Cup, that that rift is repaired and that Ziyech is there playing for Morocco, because he's obviously a fantastically gifted player as well. So Morocco will have some really, really, really talented players on the pitch.
2 Watford players in there as well, Jack, that you've forgotten about.
Imran Louza.
Yep, and Adam Messina as well. Yeah,
so Adam Messina,
obviously they've got strength. They've got a lot of strength, a lot of heart, and a lot of ability.
Yeah, Imran Louza.
Carry on.
No, I was going to. Yeah, again, fantastic, hardworking, technical players. I've seen a bit of Imran Louza, nowhere near as much as you have, but I've been impressed with him. The way that he anchors midfield, the way he drops back into defence to help with the build-up. He's very good on the ball. So yeah, a talented team. And I don't know. I just look at that group and I've got a bit of a feeling that those 2 older, experienced European teams, if they go in there thinking, it'll just be Belgium and Croatia that breeze through this group through to the last 16, we don't have to worry about the Canada and Morocco games. I think they could be in for a bit of a fright, actually, Adam. And that's why I think that group will be more... If Belgium and Croatia go in with the wrong attitudes, that could prove prove to be a perilous group.
Well, let's bring someone in who knows all about that group, or one team in particular in that group. Someone who is very excited, who is sort of on a crest of a wave at the moment, on cloud nine still, just living La Vida Loca. It is Joshua Cloke, who covers Canadian football for The Athletic. Joshua, great to have you on board. Great to have you on the show. Just give us your reaction to Canada being at a World Cup in the first place, but also then in the draw and in a group with Belgium, Morocco, and Croatia. Just give us your reaction.
Well, I mean, you just saying those words, Canada being at a World Cup, it still kind of defies like logic. It really does. I think, you go back to when Canada started this final round of qualifying back in September, the expectation was that the talent was there, right? Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Stephen Eustáquio, Tajon Buchanan, the names were there, but whether or not they could kind of all pull it together and get into a World Cup was another story, right? So to finish top of the group in CONCACAF and to go on the improbable run that they did, again, I don't think anybody could have predicted this. So I think if you're Canada and if you're John Herdman and you're looking at this final draw, it's all gravy. I don't know if you could have, if you would have said, well, we want this team or this team. This is a country that has been at one World Cup, has never scored a goal in a World Cup, has never gotten a draw or a win at the World Cup. The expectation is to just go there and not necessarily have fun, but surprise teams, play without fear. I like that if you're Canada, you get Belgium right away, right? So you get right up to speed on what a real top side looks like. And that's one thing I should mention that Canada is that's one thing Canada is going to need to do. Throughout the summer, book friendlies against, if they can get teams, really, really good sides, because no disrespect to the Mexicos and the United States and the Costa Ricas of the world, this is a completely different animal, right? And so Canada, again, a year ago was playing Aruba, Cayman Islands, right? To get into this final round. They need to figure out very, very quickly what top international sides look like, feel like, play like. So getting Belgium right away is good. I don't think anybody has any expectations of getting a win there. Croatia, again, maybe a bit of an aging side. So if you're John Herdman, you say maybe we can run them off the pitch. We know Canada has got a ton of pace. They will be one of the fastest teams at this World Cup. But again, keep your expectations realistic. Maybe somehow there's a draw in there. And then what I like if you're Canada is that you have Morocco last, right? So that's probably the game you have circled as the one that you can get your first World Cup win in. And it's very surreal to even just say that. It really is, to even imagine that would be possible. But I think the draw in that sense, the timing of the games lines up really, really well for them. But honestly, you mentioned it. The excitement here, around the country it's honestly evident.
I was reading your piece on The Athletic on the way into the HQ here in London.
Awesome.
I'm trying to remember. There were so many different things. Basically, the title of the piece is "Why Canada Are the Team That Everyone Can Get Behind at This World Cup." I'm trying to think of backflipping, big singing, and there's so many elements to the piece. Obviously, high quality and Alphonso Davies, and we obviously watched his fantastic reaction to the actual qualification, which was great and went viral and all that. But I wanted to just pick up on one thing that is obviously something that an English audience can certainly get on board with, and that is John Herdman, the head coach, the manager. Just give us a little bit of an insight into who he is, why he's there, and how well he's doing.
Well, he's there because he spread that kind of John Herdman magic dust all over the women's program, the Canadian women's national team. I mean, they were not a football superpower when he takes over in 2011, but the next year they go to the Olympics and they win a bronze medal. They win a bronze medal at the 2016 Olympics as well. And John Herdman was without a doubt the face of the program through the 2015 World Cup, which Canada hosted. So the turnaround in the women's program was remarkable. And he obviously instilled a culture, put a framework in place that allowed them pushed them towards their gold medal at this summer's Olympics. He's the type of manager that, all the cliches are true with John Herdman. Players want to run through a wall for him. Players, believe in the tactical makeup that he presents. He gets his teams as prepared as any men's national team ever, right? Alphonso Davies last week said that, before with the national team, he'd been with one manager, Octavio Zambrano. It was, here's the lineup, go out and play. But when you watch John Herdman's training sessions, they are so well planned. They are so detailed, and his players feel so prepared for what will come up against them. And that's kind of manifested through qualifying in different tactical outlooks, I guess. Against Mexico, they were able to not necessarily bunker, but play in kind of a medium block, hit Mexico on the counterattack, and they got a draw and a win against Mexico. Against the United States, they were able to kind of catch them, I guess, by surprise and go full tilt and attack them, right? So they have the ability to play on the counter when they need to, and they have the ability to kind of possess the ball when they need to, depending on the opponent. And that's owed to John Herdman, who has really presented these teams or these players with the kind of tactical know-how that, again, if we're being honest, has never really existed in a Canadian manager before.
Well, we wish you and we wish Canada all the very best at the World Cup. And it's just great to have Canada in there for the first time since 1986, only the second time, which is absolutely fantastic. If you could just sum up your emotions right now in a word or a sentence, what would you say?
Optimistic. Yeah, oh. and I think that's kind of what I honestly think that's something that Canada, the whole world, kind of needs right now, is this kind of optimism. I know that this World Cup is kind of fraught with a lot of, what are we going to call them, challenges. We don't have to get too political there, but I do think that this is the kind of team that Canadians have been, and I should say this is the kind of team that the Canadians have really been looking towards or looking for a long time. This is a country that, is known for its ice hockey supremacy. When you go back to the 2010 and 2014 Winter Olympics, when Canada wins the gold medals, these were teams full of people that just looked like you and me, right? But this men's national team is a team comprised of refugees, immigrants, people of color, and it really speaks to what Canada looks like in a way that I don't think any national team has before. And that's important for me. That's important for a lot of Canadians. And I think that's why I'm optimistic about, this Canadian team stepping out, into the global stage in Qatar in a way that no team ever has.
Well, Joshua, I really appreciate your time. And I would like to just give a little shout out, because Watford have a connection with Canada, and that is Mark Watson, who used to play for Watford back in the day, ages and ages and ages ago. He's now the head coach of Minnesota, if I think that's right. So yeah, I quite like the fact that Canada have finally made it, and I like that a lot. And I look forward to seeing how they do. Joshua, thank you very much. Obviously, you can read a lot more from Joshua on The Athletic, and yeah, dig out that article, why Canada are the team that everyone can get behind at this World Cup. If you're on board with The Athletic. If you're not, head to theathletic.com. Joshua, thank you very much. I'll say goodbye to you now, and I will finish off with Jack. And Joshua mentioned it there, about this World Cup coming at a time which I think a lot of people are struggling with getting excited about anything, considering what's going on in the world, in particular in Ukraine. And we haven't talked about that yet with England's group. It's either going to be Wales or Scotland or Ukraine. It's a difficult one to really sort of get your head around, really, isn't it? To work out what we want to happen, what team we want to be in there with England. Can you sort of put it into words how difficult that is to sort of unpack at the moment?
Yeah, it is very difficult. I don't know who I personally want England to face. I don't know who the general public or even would want England to face. And I certainly don't know who the kind of global football community would want. Clearly, there will be an awful lot of sympathy with Ukraine, and understandably so, given the invasion of that country recently. We don't know about the scheduling of Ukraine's game with Scotland, and then the game between the winner of that particular tie and Wales. Clearly, it will have to happen at some point between now and November. Clearly, that will be a very emotionally fraught game for a Ukrainian team whose country has gone through an unimaginable set of events in the last month or so, which which players such as Zinchenko has spoken very honestly and candidly about, or the legendary Andrei Shevchenko. So clearly there is a huge political backdrop to that particular fixture when it is played. If Ukraine were to win those two games, and I'm making no call as to whether or not they're likely to do so, but if they were to win those games and to play at the World Cup, obviously that would be a huge story, huge story, given everything that's happened this year. We just don't know. We don't, I don't know what will happen in those games. I think it's almost pointless to speculate. If it's not Ukraine, if it's Wales or Scotland, that would be a huge story as well. This would be what's not only Scotland's first tournament, but also it'd be Scotland's first. It would be Scotland's first World Cup, since France '98, where I believe they went out in the group stages. Obviously, they were at the Euros last year in slightly strange circumstances because of the behind closed doors nature of them, but they got a good draw at Wembley in that game that was 0-0, which was the only group game that England didn't win. So it would be a huge sporting achievement for Scotland to reach this World Cup, their first for 28 years. And then for Wales, obviously, I think Wales have done better than Scotland in recent years. They got to Euro 2016 where they did fantastically well and reached the semi-finals. They got to the Euros last year where, unfortunately, they were badly beaten by Denmark and got eliminated. But I feel like with Wales, there's such a talented generation who've been starring for them over the last 6 years. It would really be the climax, I think, of that generation. Bale, Ramsey, Joe Allen, and so on, if they were to get to this particular World Cup in Qatar, which I believe will be their first World Cup since I think it's 1958. So whoever wins, and obviously very different circumstances, very different contexts, it's going to be a really interesting opponent for England in that particular game. And I think, all three of those would, in their own ways, be a fascinating challenge and a fascinating addition to the group. And so in that sense, certainly an awful lot to play for, as there are in the two intercontinental playoffs that I believe are also yet to be settled.
Jack, really appreciate you coming on and giving your analysis. You can read the words of Jack Pitt-Brooke on The Athletic, of course. Jack, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend. Just to run you through it, in audio form, as well as on the screen, as you can see there, rolling down the ticker at the bottom of your screen. If you've missed it, you've been out, you didn't catch the razzmatazz on the television and the World Cup draw. We had 4 pots with 8 teams drawn into those 8 groups, A to H of 4 teams. The hosts, Qatar, were in A1, along with Ecuador, Senegal, and Netherlands. England are in a group with Iran, USA, and it will be either Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine in with them. In Group C, it's Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland. In Group D, France, the defending champions, winners in '98 and 2018, of course, against the intercontinental playoff winner between UAE and Australia against Peru. Denmark and Tunisia also in Group D. In Group E, it is going to be Spain, Costa Rica or New Zealand, Germany and Japan. We spoke about Canada, of course, with Joshua Cloak. They are in Group F with Belgium, Morocco and Croatia. In Group G, it is Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland and Cameroon. And then in Group H, it is Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay and Korea Republic. And the tournament takes place between the 21st of November and the 18th of December. So there is going to be a hiatus around the world for this World Cup to take place in Qatar. A controversial World Cup, but it is going ahead. And we now know the fixtures, pretty much all the fixtures now, bar those 3 teams that need to advance to join the other 29 who are knowing that they're already in that World Cup. And yeah, it is all done now, the draw. I hope you've enjoyed the reaction show with our reporters all around the world. Matt Slater over in Qatar. Paul Tenorio was in Costa Rica, covers the US as well. Felipe Cardenas bringing us insight onto Central American and South American sides as well. And Jack Pitt-Brooke with us covering England and beyond in Europe. And also we were joined by Joshua Clote talking about Canada. And I think he was probably the happiest of us all on the call, because Canada are at a World Cup for the first time since 1986. The coverage continues on The Athletic. Head online. There is a discussion going on theathletic.com, and there's going to be a lot of fallout now from the various fixtures, especially England, USA, and beyond. We'll have it all covered on The Athletic. Thanks very much for watching on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. I've been Adam Leventhal, and I hope you have a great weekend. And don't forget, you'll be able to see all of the coverage of the World Cup on The Athletic, but there is a lot of football to be played before that around the world, and that is all covered too. Take care, everyone. All the best.